Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So here is my top 5 episodes of The Walking Dead, of I guess both shows that came out, because in 2024 we only got 2 shows, and that was The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live and The Walking Dead: Daryl Dixon Season 2. So I went over the episodes that came out for The Walking Dead, and yeah, I ranked them all in this order, and I'm pretty confident in this list. This is generally how I feel overall about all of the episodes that came out in 2024. So yeah, obviously before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. But I guess let's just get into number 5, which actually, first of all, tomorrow I will be posting my top 5 worst episodes, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, let's get into number 5 here. So number 5, Le Paradis pour Toi. It's in French, so I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly, which I'm probably not saying it correctly at all. But this was the 4th episode of season 2, and honestly, out of all of the episodes, I think was the episode that was probably the most controversial because of certain things that they actually did. But when you look at a lot of the episodes that came out for The Walking Dead: Daryl Dixon, this one really had a lot that went on in it. As much as I really don't like one of the moments that happened in here, and that is with Isabel's death, definitely, you know, a character that should still be around the show. I think it was a big mistake killing the character off. I think she could have really added to the show so much in season 3 and even 4, 5, 6, however long they're going for. And I think killing her off in this episode was just a really bad decision. But when you look at the way the episode plays out, it's a really great episode. It begins with Madame Genet outside the nest, and you have some really amazing visuals overall. And honestly, it just looked really incredible. You know, I think the battle at the nest originally looked really cool. It was really awesome to see a lot of that happen. But you know, I think for the most part, where this episode is the strongest is when Daryl and Carol actually reunite, because they do reunite in this episode, and it was a really amazing scene. It was really cool to see. You know, I definitely think that it's not as great as Rick and Michonne reuniting, obviously, because that was built up over like years and years and years, but it was still very cool to see them together. And I think the season got so much better once Daryl and Carol were actually together. Like, seeing them on screen together and like being a part of the story, the rest of the episode was just absolutely incredible. You know, like they actually run into 2 new characters, and they learn a lot about themselves through these new characters. I thought the story here was really well told. And then also what happens in this episode is Madame Genet's death. We learn some backstory and also some other things here that sort of tease for the future in terms of, you know, walkers potentially being created in France. And this episode ended the entire Pouvoir arc, which, I mean, I guess technically it still kind of went on for, you know, another 2 more episodes, but really it was sort of over here. It was kind of underwhelming, but Madame Genet's death was absolutely incredible. And I think this episode, to me, I think just makes sense to make a top 5 list out of the 12 episodes that aired last year. It just wouldn't make sense if I left this off my list. But number 4, by The Ones Who Live. So this episode was the 3rd episode of The Ones Who Live season 1, and we get this flashback of Jadis, and we see how, you know, I guess she met Rick and whatnot when they were at the CRM. We started to learn a little bit more about, you know, what Rick was doing at the CRM, I guess, earlier on and whatnot. We learned more about the CRM just sort of in general. And we know that Rick is trying to escape, right? And I think that's one of the things that I really loved about that arc. And honestly, that's kind of why I wish there was more episodes, because I like the story of Rick trying to escape constantly. And like, I get the explanation of, you know, the very first episode of like seeing all of that and hearing all of the attempts. Like, we don't have to see everything and all of that, but there's just so much story there that I wish we could actually see a lot of that play out. And so hearing about a lot of this here, a lot of the backstory here was just really incredible. You know, I think Michonne actually being at the CRM as well. Also, you know, the whole like the phone mystery or whatever, because Rick was like drawing pictures of Michonne and Judith and whatnot on these phones. And so getting that mystery revealed here in this episode was amazing. The whole echelon briefing as well. Like, we learned a lot more about that, a lot of the details here. And I will say, before the finale, this episode really built up the CRM. And it was really exciting to think of like what Major General Beale could be in the future, you know, just for The Walking Dead in general. And so I think in terms of a CRM episode, this was like the episode, because it just had Rick and Michonne both at the CRM uncovering all of these, you know, mysteries and whatnot. And also Jadis was there and a big part of this episode as well. And so it was really cool to see, because they were both trying to escape, and they actually do escape. It was something that I wasn't expecting to happen this early, you know, I guess in the season. Like, I didn't think Rick and Michonne were just going to escape that fast, but it makes sense when you look back at it now. But I really was not expecting that. And so Michonne and Rick, falling out of the helicopter and whatnot into the water, like at first, you kind of laugh about it because you're like, wait, what? How does that make any sense? But once you watch episode 4, you realize how close they are to the water. So it does overall, like, it does make sense. But yeah, I just thought this episode was a really solid, exciting episode. It was the first one where you had Rick and Michonne together, the entire time. I know in episode 2, they were together for a little bit in the second half of that episode, and also obviously at the very end of episode 1. But this was the first one where they were like together the entire time. You saw a lot of the drama there. You saw Rick and like why he couldn't really be around Michonne, why he was almost so mad that Michonne was even there kind of thing, and like didn't leave the CRM and all of that. Like you just saw how much Rick has changed over the years. And even though I think they probably could have did a little bit better at showing that, I think that overall it was still really well done. And again, it's number 4 on my top 5 list. So yeah, really incredible episode. But number 3, Goodbye Children, I believe is how you translate that. But this was the very last episode of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon season 2. My favorite episode of the season. I know that a lot of people like episode 4 more than this one because, Norman Reedus definitely hyped up this episode quite a bit, said it was like the best 1 hour of anything Walking Dead ever. I would disagree with that, but I still think it was the best episode of the season. And the reason why is, again, you have Daryl and Carol together, in this episode. You really establish a story. Like, that's the one thing about The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon is that the first season felt like a really amazing, like, Daryl story, right? And then the second season felt like it was just a mess because it didn't really know what it wanted to be. But by the end, it figured it out. It was like, no, this is the Daryl and Carol show. And you saw how great those characters are together. It's just when they were apart and you're trying to get Carol to be a part of the story, when you already established this whole story with Daryl in season 1, like, it was just a mess of a season. But by the end, you see what the potential is going to be for season 3. We saw the trailer for season 3. It looks absolutely incredible. So I do think that it's going to get a lot better now, like now that we know what the story is going to be. But that happens with all shows, right? There's always like a bad season here and there. But this episode to me was honestly really great. We saw the downfall of, I guess, the Nest and overall Pouvoir. Like that whole arc completely ended here. Laurent and Ash actually went to America. Ash is going to take him to the Commonwealth. So there's so many exciting things there. First of all, just in terms of what that means for the future and reuniting with Rick and all of that. But that was just one part of the episode, which the action and everything just felt so classic Walking Dead. Honestly, it was just really incredible. That whole sequence was just absolutely amazing. Everything with the plane there, everything felt so real. The world was just absolutely, it just felt very lived in and not so like comic booky, which is what I really like about The Walking Dead. When it gets very comic booky, I'm not a fan of it, which I know it's based off of the comics, but the reason why I really like the show is because they sort of make everything a little bit more down to earth. And sometimes they haven't done that, right? Where things seem a little too silly. But I think that in this episode here, I mean, all the stuff that happened with the plane and everything just felt like it made a lot of sense. And so I really enjoyed all of that. Daryl also, Daryl and Carol going into, I guess, the tunnel because they're trying to get to London. That whole thing was amazing. Cadron going crazy. There's still a mystery there as to what's going to happen to him next. Daryl hallucinating Isabel, seeing his grandfather, Carol seeing Sophia and all of that. And I just think overall this episode was a really great, like it ended everything that we sort of, I guess, learned in the season. Out of all the episodes in this season, to me, this was the best one because it ended everything properly and it really set up the future really well. And again, I think that's how everyone felt. Like most people after watching this episode got really excited about the show again. Whereas before this, it was very much just like, what is going on? Where is this story going? I know that after episode 5, like you saw the potential there, but you were still mad about, where things went in the previous episodes. But going into the finale here, I think it fixed a lot of that. But we'll have to wait and see where things go for season 3. I'm still hoping that they're going to be doing 8 episodes, but I don't really know about that. We'll have to wait and see. Like they're still filming everything right now, so they could always add 2 more, right? We'll have to wait and see. But number 2, the Ones Who Live. So this episode here was obviously the one that Denai Guerrero wrote, and it really was the first episode that was like extremely emotional and it really brought Rick and Michonne back to a sense of like, oh, we recognize them again. I'm not saying like we didn't recognize them before this, but it was just, I think both characters actually in this episode recognized each other. I think it was more that Michonne was trying to figure out, for herself, just like, how can I connect with Rick again? Because it's been like so long, right? It's been like almost 10 years. So obviously there's going to be, it's going to be a bit awkward. And Rick is also not even really the same person anymore. And so this one here, Michonne really got through to Rick, and we saw the old Rick Grimes come back in this episode here. And it took a little bit, he was just so scared because the CRM did a lot to him. And so it was really amazing to actually see that. I think the writing in this episode was incredible. The dialogue, everything they talked about. I have issues with like not bringing up Daryl and like certain things like that, but I still think the stuff they talked about when it comes to like their family and Carl and whatnot, like that was absolutely all incredible. Andrew Lincoln getting really emotional about all of that, like his acting, I thought was really incredible. I still think it's insane that this show never got nominated for an Emmy. Like, I don't understand that at all. And so, yeah, in terms of the way this episode ends, it was very positive. Like, they got away. It seemed like they actually did get away. Like, things were going to be very good because the helicopter crashed into the building, so they could just say that, yeah, they all died kind of thing. And so the CRM were probably going to leave them alone. And so they were going to be able to go back home. And so that's how it ends. Rick and Michonne, they're able to go back home to Alexandria now, right? And so that was just a very hopeful ending. And again, the episode I thought was just, it's one of those episodes where I think, honestly, you could just put it on at any time and you can watch it and you're just completely glued to the TV. Like, you have to watch the whole thing because the dialogue and like every scene that is happening is just so intense. And I like the fact that Rick and Michonne are arguing during certain parts in this episode because I feel like, with where things were before this, it just always seemed like Rick and Michonne were on the same page, this and that. And like, you want there to be more excitement there, right? You want to see more of them arguing this and that and just being like really strong characters. And we saw that in this episode, both characters standing their ground, and really amazing, first of all, amazingly written episode. And I think in terms of the characters, it's one of those episodes that I think a lot of people will talk about for a very long time. But I want to get into my number one episode, which is Years, The Ones Who Live. And this is the very first episode here of The Ones Who Live. I really enjoy this episode quite a bit. And the reason why this one here for me is, again, like this one and episode 4 are very close for me. Like, they're very, very close because I really like both aspects to it. But personally for me, the reason why I like this one a little bit more is just because of the drama and how things seem so hopeless in this episode. Like, Rick is just stuck here. He's not going to get away, right? And a lot of the backstory that we learn, Okafor, a really incredible character. Honestly, I would say out of all the new characters that were introduced in just The Walking Dead in general in 2024, Okafor was the best character easily, and I wish he survived. I really wish that Okafor survived. Like, he was there for the first episode and then like that's it. Honestly, he's one of the best characters that I've seen on The Walking Dead in a very, very long time. I hope that for Tales of the Walking Dead season 2 or like just something else, if they ever plan to do that, like bring him back to get like another episode or to do something else with the character, because the acting is absolutely incredible. Like, if you think about it, this show is set so far into the future, you could probably do a whole like 3 or 4 season spin-off on Okafor. I don't know what you would tell with it. It would have to be like, or maybe it's only like a limited series, like 1 season or 2 season thing, but that character can lead a show easily. A lot of people love that character. There's so much story there. You can come up with a lot of stuff for that character. And honestly, he's what makes this episode really great. In terms of, what Rick was going through, he really helped Rick survive here. If it wasn't for him, Rick would have been gone pretty much right away. Like, there was no way Rick was surviving, but the reason why he did is because of Okafor. Okafor really just, stood up for Rick quite a bit, and we saw Rick go through a lot. There was a lot of revelations about what they knew about Rick and stuff, and where he came from in Alexandria. There was that scene between Rick and Okafor that was probably, like, they talked a lot about like Murder Jacket Rick coming back. I will say, when you look at the series overall, we never really got that, but this moment here, I would say, was the closest, where Rick just looked really cool, and, just hearing how much he wants to be back with his family and everything, like, it just felt like that was the Rick Grimes. And so that was Rick before he became, broken like he was eventually, but it was just a really incredible episode, and I just think that the overall CRM mission, like, this episode could have been a movie on its own, just like entirely, just this one episode. And it ends with Rick and Michonne reuniting, which I think is really great. The only thing I would say that was kind of it's something that I would change in this episode for sure, and that is the whole dream sequence with Rick and Michonne. I get what they were trying to do in terms of later on, Rick wasn't really dreaming of Michonne anymore, but I just think they could have done that a little bit better, because I think seeing Rick and Michonne together before they reunited, it didn't really like ruin the whole reunion at the very end, but it kind of did a little bit, because I think if you saw them together for the first time on screen in that moment, it would have been just way more amazing, right? But you saw it before and it was just like, it kind of took a little bit of that away, I would say. But still, ending in that way, also Rick flying a helicopter, like, that was really cool. Just overall, this episode, like, it just visually and everything about this episode, it's so dark. The episode starting off with Rick alone in his apartment, and it's nighttime and everything, and the music. It's really incredible, honestly. If there's one episode that you have to watch of The Walking Dead that came out in 2024, it is this one. Definitely go and watch it. I really highly recommend watching it. So that's my top 5 episodes of the year. Definitely post your top 5 down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.